Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
Welcome to Richard Listens on Sports. I'm your host, Peter Sobey. Alongside me, the doctor himself, Dr. Richard Ohlberger.
Yo.
We got some great sports show energy coming your way today. I got my Chicago Bears hat on because I'm a Bears fan. Richard over there is a Giants fan. We both had sad days yesterday, but our teams will persevere. There was definitely some silver linings to the clouds. So today we have a great show, hopefully an impactful show. It's the anniversary of 9/11, as you all know out there, and our guest today is actually our guest that we attempted to have on August 7th when we endured lots of technical difficulties, Dr. Kristina Reihl. We will definitely look forward to welcoming her on the show in just a little bit, and it's apropos that she's able to come back on the show today because 9/11 and the events that happened that day are what inspired her to become a psychologist, and we definitely look forward to hearing that story and, you know, turning her story and, you know, other people's stories into inspiration and motivation from tragedy. And especially with the times we're going through right now, we definitely want to send, you know, big hearts and big love to all the people that are involved with the earthquake down in Mexico and, of course, all the hurricanes in Florida and the East Coast and the Atlantic. So we definitely send our love. And ironically, the two women that you'll be seeing on our show today, one is coming from Mexico City and one's coming from the East Coast. So they both had their scares with those disasters. And our resident fitness wellness expert, Caitlin, is actually going to address that with her tip. So that's what we got lined up for you on our show. And before we get to Caitlin, in just one moment, just if you're watching us on Facebook.com/RichardListens, don't forget to leave a question or a comment, and Dr. Richard and I will try to get to it. Welcome to the show, AJ. And it's always good to see our resident AJ Collier, lacrosse coach extraordinaire, tuning in. Dr. Richard, before we get to KitCait and her tip, how are you doing?
I'm doing. It's hot out there. It is a tough day. It's a tough day to remember. There's a little, you know, air of sadness out there. But I'm okay. I'm healthy, and yeah, we're just so many thoughts to people and family on the East Coast down there in Florida, and feels a little bit selfish to be in here in our studio and talking about topics like sports on a day like today, but you know, we know that some of our listeners need things to do to pass the time, maybe when they can't get out or don't have power. Maybe they'll be listening later on. But our thoughts are with you and our prayers, and we know that maybe sports are a welcome distraction, and the stories you're about to hear today might help give you some meaning going forward.
I like that. That's a really good point. I mean, it does. Like, coming into the show, Dr. Richard, I feel a little weird that we're, you know, talking about, hey, how can we make our show a little bit more upbeat? And, you know, we want to talk about the sports and psychology and inspiration and motivation. And we know there's a lot of people out there suffering and it's difficult, but, you know, it's our way of maybe putting joy into the world and putting positive energy into the world that will help that situation. It doesn't make sense to keep lamenting and everything. So we send our love to those people, and this is our little effort to put some positive energy into the world, and let's all build on that.
Absolutely. Well said.
Thank you. And with that, let's bring on our resident fitness wellness expert who's coming to us live from Mexico City. It's our very own Coach KitCait, Caitlin Patricia Weiler. Welcome to the show, Caitlin.
Hi guys, thank you. And I love what you had to say, Peter, that we want to, obviously we have everyone in our thoughts and prayers. And this week I experienced my first earthquake here in Mexico City. And if I wasn't in Mexico City, I would have been living in Miami. So it looks like I couldn't have avoided these natural disasters. But I was really taking into thought, these occurrences and it being the anniversary of 9/11. And, it doesn't matter where we live, what we're doing, or, how life takes us, that we're always something that might be challenging. So I was thinking about how I could relate that to, health and wellness. And one of my new clients I have with KitBody, she had written me an email of kind of what her realizations were in her first week here working with me. And one of those things that was affecting her was that she had family in Florida that was being affected by the hurricane. And she said, what I learned this week by being attentive to my eating habits and my life and my stress is that the number one thing was that she was worried about her family in Florida, and that was actually causing her emotional eating. Same with having, regular family stressors, or if anybody has a tragedy, I think that sometimes we don't realize how that affects every aspect of our life. And maybe not only does it affect our eating, it also affects sleeping and different things like that. So then it got me thinking into, well, how can I give a tip to help everybody out there? But what I realized is I don't think there's one specific thing that can help an individual when it comes to stress, because we all handle stress differently. So I guess a recommendation to give to all is that to first realize what is a trigger for your stressors, and then find a way that maybe you can strategize to help yourself in the future if you feel that stress come on. And one thing I wanted to do in honor and light of all of the things and all the hard things that are happening in the world right now is that if anybody out there that is watching or listening would like any help on strategizing, if they have emotional eating or stress eating, if anybody has a question or would like some help for a particular situation, I would love for you to reach out to me on my website, kitbody.com or CaitlinPatriciaWeiler.com. And I'm happy to just answer your questions, because like I said, I don't think there's one specific thing for everybody to help with these kind of stressors. Plus, every kind of stressor we experience is different. So again, my thoughts and my prayers go to everybody out there. And if anyone's in need, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help.
That's incredible, Caitlin. Dr. Richard, what are your thoughts?
Well, I just want to say, Caitlin, I know that you're not one to be short of adversity in your life, and I appreciate that despite all this going on, that you're still out there keeping your focus on other people. I have no idea what it must be like to be in a 8.1, I believe, earthquake, but certainly isn't easy to get up and be thinking about other people and their wellness at that moment. So thank you for being with us, and that's one of the reasons I think we love having you on the show is that you're really willing to put other people first and even be thinking about resilience and fighting stress at some time like this. It's really crucial because it gets deprioritized to the bottom thing when you're just trying to survive or reorient to your life, and sometimes you pick up some really poor coping skills like just eating whatever you can because that's what there is in front of you. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thanks, guys. And like I said, anybody who wants any questions or anything, please reach out.
Amazing. Caitlin, as always, thank you for being with us, and we will see you next time with another fitness wellness tip. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Caitlin.
All right.
Speaking of which, Caitlin is always out there on the racetrack, and Logan Lucky is a really enjoyable, fun flick to see if you need a distraction from everything going on right now.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it for sure.
Yeah, so.
And Richard and I actually saw a movie together recently, The Assassin's Hitman. And, I'll say this, it was good, mindless fun.
That's what we needed. We needed a little bonding and a little distraction. I don't know about, witnessing 300 Ways to Die
right.
as a method of stress reduction, but see, even we make mistakes in our choices.
Yep, absolutely. So we are coming up to our guest in just a couple minutes, Dr. Kristina Reihl, live from the East Coast, and we're excited to have her on. And, we mentioned that she was inspired to become a psychologist by 9/11. So I thought I would take a moment to share my 9/11 story because it's, it's maybe not inspirational, but it's one of those things you never forget what's going on. So At the time, I was in the middle of producing this movie called Being Ron Jeremy, which was a spoof of Being John Malkovich, but it was about a stand-up comic that gets into the body of famous porn star Ron Jeremy and all the hilarity that ensues. And so Ron called on a bunch of his, I know we got a family show here and I'm talking about porn actors, but
he's famous pop culture.
yeah,
Ron
he's
Jeremy.
pop culture. So he called on like all his porn actress friends to come in and make cameos and stuff. And one of them, we flew in from Florida to be part of the film. And she didn't have anywhere to stay, so I offered her my sofa. And she happened to, right in the middle of filming, 9/11 happened. So it was kind of like this 2 days of bonding with this, porn actress, Alexandra. But it was like amazing. Like, at first, I'm a guy, I'm like, oh my God, I've got a porn actress on my couch. But then, everything gets real, and it's amazing the bond you make with people, in times like this. And when you realize what's real and what's important in life, and some of the life discussions we had and conversations, I'll never forget.
Yeah, puts things really in perspective right then.
Now, of course, I've actually got friends that were inspired to join the armed forces and help protect our country and all of that. So I know my story pities in that, like, oh, I had great life conversations with a porn actress. But it's kind of like I'm kind of showing the dichotomy of the fact of it's like, oh, I'm a giddy guy with a porn actress living on my couch. But then, it turns into this really emotional situation where you're sharing life stories and learning what's important in life. And yeah, it's amazing how that event did go on to.
Yeah, well, it's amazing the real common denominator, no matter how different you think you are or a different walk of life or profession, when tragedy strikes, it's an opportunity to come together and support one another.
So with that being said, I'm really looking forward to hearing Dr. Kristina's story about how 9/11 inspired her to become a psychologist. And with that, I would like to welcome to the show Dr. Kristina Reihl.
Hey guys.
You're sounding clear tonight.
Yeah.
Hey,
looking
we
good.
got it.
So yes, we're very happy because, as you know, Dr. Kristina, and a lot of our audience knows, we had you on August 7th, and many, many, many technical difficulties ensued, and we had to end your segment of the show early. So we're very grateful to have you back. Thank you.
Oh, I'm just glad to be here. It's technical difficulties happen, and if you can't just roll with the punches, then what are you going to do?
Well, hopefully we didn't cause you 2 months of anger management courses or anything like that.
No, you didn't.
So if anyone could deal with it, it would be you, Dr. Kristina.
It's true. I guess I was the right person, right?
And so before we get into your story, like, I've really pumped up our audience to hear how you were inspired by the events of 9/11. For those of us, or those of our audience that weren't watching the show on August 7th, Dr. Richard, tell us really quickly how you and Dr. Kristina, the real deal, met.
Have you branded that yet? Or?
I really should, honestly. That's a gift from my husband. I can't take credit.
Hey, partners in life,
Yeah.
So Dr. Kristina Reihl and I met earlier this summer at a fabulous annual conference hosted by Jack Lisak, sports psychologist and believe owner and president of the Ohio Center for Sports Psychology. Forgive if I've mispronounced the title. He's also an ASP Association board member. So the board is doing all the ruling on training and professionalism in sports psychology as it continues to evolve and grow amongst performance and mental skills and kinesiologists and psychologists and sports psychologists. So it was a fascinating few-day event where we were learning about his experience and how to broach this field in the current marketplace that we're in. So really blown away by the young professionals and their stories and the amount of people that are going into this field in different ways. And Dr. Kristina, is not afraid. She's not afraid to enter the realm of hockey. So that's really what stood out to me and got me my ears perked up.
Yeah, and we definitely can't wait to hear about that as well.
Yeah, it was a great few days that we spent together, just kind of talking about our experiences and our different passions, and it was really great to get to know you that weekend.
And now here we are, many weekends later, on the Richard Listens on Sports Show, live at UBN Radio TV, United Broadcasting Network, at the Sunset Gower Studios in Hollywood, California, where we are experiencing very warm and beautiful weather despite what's going on around the country. And before we do get into your 9/11 story, Dr. Kristina, what was your experience with the hurricane there?
Well, actively experiencing is kind of where we're at. We're feeling some effects of the hurricane now. Some of the outer bands are kind of moving through the Charlotte area. Nothing major, no major damage to our property as of yet. Our next door neighbors actually had a very large tree limb fall. So that was interesting to hear right outside my but they are okay, so that's a good thing. I actually did my graduate work, my PhD in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So it was very surreal to see Fort Lauderdale Beach underwater. My sister-in-law lives in Tampa. So, her and her family were really in the crosshairs there for quite some time during the last few nights, challenging. To kind of watch my friends and family go through that. But everyone that I know is safe and well, thankfully. So.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And as we get into the 9/11 story, our great watcher, AJ Collier, lets us know an inspirational sports-related 9/11 story is the story of Wells Crother, the man with the red bandana. Check it out. Are you familiar with that story, Dr. Richard?
I am not.
Yeah, me neither. So we'll definitely have to look into that. And I know Jarvis will come
will
up
be
with
on it, or we'll see which one of our
info.
listeners gets to it first.
So yeah, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But there's many, many inspirational stories. So Dr. Kristina, tell us your experience that 9/11, how it inspired you to get into the field of psychology.
Well, to put it into context, I was a sophomore in high school. The morning of 9/11, I was actually in biology class, and an announcement came over the loudspeaker saying that there was a plane that hit World Trade Center. Living in New York and on Long Island, it was a very different experience than I think a lot of the country went through that day, because there was a lot of uncertainty as to what was really happening in your own backyard. Long Island obviously is an island, and I know that there was a lot of concern that the bridges were going to be taken out and that we were going to be stuck. There was a lot of concern in my high school just regarding parents. Long Island is a commuter community. Many parents, grandparents, family members commute into the city to work every day. And I remember being friends just sure about where their family was. Cell phone numbers went out shortly after the attacks because there was an onslaught of phone calls coming in. So there was really a big lack of communication that day. And, when everything was said and done, the entire community, it was like a call to action that happened in Long Island and in New York, New Jersey, and really the surrounding areas, and really across the country. But especially in our small community, it was this idea that we had to do something, that something had to happen, that we could make a difference. Many of my friends joined the volunteer fire department after 9/11. And that kind of rolled into them signing up for the Army, Marines, Navy. I have more friends than I can count who straight out of high school went into the military because of 9/11. And it was just an experience where I didn't find my place for a long time. I didn't find that place where I could do something to help. So several years went by, and I started college. And by that time, it was about 6 years from that time to when I graduated college that 9/11 had happened. And I was starting to really decide what I wanted to do at the end of kind of go time. And I had to figure it out. And my friends started coming home who were in the military, and I noticed that things were really different for them. They had a lot of difficulty coping with everyday life. And I had been taking psychology courses throughout college, and I said to myself, well, geez, this is actually what I can do. I can help by being a psychologist who works with military professionals. I can be a psychologist that works with people who experience trauma, who are in crisis. And so throughout my entire graduate career, I really focused on working with individuals who were in the military. I was a founding member of an organization called Students United for Returning Veterans, and really was just active in that community. And as I continued, I did all of my training at a VA medical center and had the pleasure of working with fantastic individuals. So I was really, really blessed to have that.
Wow, that's really amazing. Dr. Richard, what do you make of that story?
Yeah, I mean, 9/11, I can't imagine being 15 years old and sitting in a classroom. I mean, I'm from New York, but I was watching from afar. And I shared that on my blog post this week. But to be there as an adolescent, I don't even know how to encapsulate that, but there's this moment, and then you're watching your friends go off who went to high school with you, and now they're coming back, and there's this moment of when you're at this point of questioning, like, what am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to be? And then to go, I can help here. Can you describe if there was a moment or a conversation that really encapsulated that?
Well, yeah, I mean, so part of this was two of my very good friends joined the infantry together, and they both came back, thank God. But I remember having a conversation with one of them on the stoop of my house, and he was talking about how different he saw the world, and how different life was after all of this had happened. And I remember actually going into class the next day, and I happened to have a psychology class, and the topic happened to be about post-traumatic stress disorder. And I thought, holy moly, that's what he's dealing with. And then I started to do some research about military veterans, and found that this was something that they dealt with often. And then I also looked into first responders. And so firefighters and other first responders tend to deal with symptoms of PTSD in a higher frequency. So it was kind of like this moment that all together perfectly. And I think that it was in the midst of tragedy that I found who I was and who I wanted to be. And I knew I wanted to be somebody who was an influencer and not somebody who was a follower of influence. And so I've been an active member of the community who really strives to reduce the stigma around mental illness, specifically around things like PTSD. And it's just been a labor of passion, really. I wasn't a person that, I knew I couldn't join the military, and I'm not saying that I couldn't, but it wasn't my place. It wasn't where I fit. And I wanted to do something, and this was it.
And I think it's amazing that you found a place where you could be an influencer and inspire people. I think one person you might have inspired is Victor Alfonte, who says, "Hi, Miss Chris."
That is my wonderful neighbor who actually lost someone very close to him, a very close family member in the towers. I believe, please correct me, Vic, if I'm wrong, but it was either his cousin or his uncle, I think. And he joined the fire department after that.
And so, we talk.
Thank you, Victor, for joining us today and
Yeah,
remembering
definitely.
your family with us.
And we talk about sports and psychology here. So, it's amazing your journey to getting to psychology and to opening yourself up to helping people like that. Before we get to your transition into sports and hockey, you said you're still involved then with helping with people coming back from military and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I just recently separated from the VA Medical Center, but when I get my new private practice up and running, which is Real Peak Performance, I will be donating 1 hour per week to an organization called Give an Hour. And it is an organization that
I'm
helps.
a provider.
Are you? Nice.
Oh, look, I never knew that about you, Dr. Richard.
See, she's pulling me out of hiding. Well, I probably need to do more to reach out, but this may be the activation.
So you give an hour a week too?
Well, no, but it's an organization. When they have a client, I believe, that needs one, they'll reach out to you, and I think that's part of the requirement, that if you give an hour to a veteran in need, and then in turn they'll try and send you clients that may be able to have insurance or something in the future. So
wow. And so, Dr. Kristina, yes, Victor says yes, his cousin, Charlie Luciani, and you're most welcome to us for thanking him for being with us on the show. So thank you, Victor, and our heart goes out to Charlie. So, Dr. Kristina, what then has led you to being peak performance and getting into sports? And I can't wait to hear about hockey. Richard definitely has some questions about that dynamic, yourself being involved with hockey players. But yeah, what led you to getting involved in sports psychology?
And maybe you could mention Kristina as well, because I'm learning a lot of people are coming out of school, they're going into performance psychology, and they may work with the military initially, and then they're making this crossover into high performance sports. In fact, a book that I've just been referred to by the mental skills coach and hopefully future guest Jesse Michelle is The Rise of Superman. So I don't know if you've read that, but it's on my my bookshelf right now, and guess it's a must read. But I'm interested what skills are similar between people in the military returning and athletes.
I think it's a sense of resiliency through difficult times that you have to harness that. When you are a high performing athlete, you're going to have difficult times. You're going to have times where you're not performing at your optimal level. And I think a lot about when some of my patients that I've seen at the VA Medical Center when I was there, a lot of their frustration was that they performed on such an elite level. They were Rangers. They were infantry members, and then they came home and it seemed like their level of performance in everyday life just crumbled around them. And so that's a comparison that I see between the two worlds. And it's an interesting crossover, right? From working with trauma and working with crisis to moving over and working with performance and athletes, but the spirit of athletes and the spirit of military members, I believe, are ones who believe in perseverance, who are motivators, who are really at their core individuals who are passionate. And those are some of the similarities that I see. But as far as how I got here, I kind of decided to leave the big box of the VA for some reasons. And I really wanted to build a practice that focused on helping someone achieve their highest level of performance, and helping through wellness and through increase in concentration and focus. And focusing on hockey players comes from my passion for hockey, which my dad instilled in me in a very young age. So that's where that comes from.
Oh boy, you're an Islander fan.
Oh, yeah.
I grew up right outside the Coliseum, but I'm a born Ranger fan, so I hope we can still share this show. There's a safe distance between us.
There is, did I not know this?
I chose to stay on safe topics with you.
Oh, that's smart. That's smart.
And I'm a Blackhawks fan, so we've had some good years recently.
Funny you say that. I went to the Blackhawks game against the Islanders, the last game during the season last year. The game where the Blackhawks decided to pull it out and win in the last 3 or 4 seconds of the game.
Ooh,
Yep.
that stings.
Yep.
Story of my life, really.
But there's nothing like growing up, getting on the train in Penn Station in Madison Square Garden, and having a standoff before and after a game. No matter what the records were, the cheers were always rowdy. And there was
Rowdy's a good word.
Yes, and there was always tension released in the space, and then you could just like run to your train and get out of Dodge.
Well, yeah, that was involved. But I remember when my dad took me to my first Islander Ranger game, he said, "Now, Chris, you have to realize that these games are a little bit different than other games you've been to."
Oh, gee, did you ask, what do you mean, Dad?
Well, I was well aware right after it started.
Oh, I see.
And so now that's why you're interested in helping hockey players from those experiences of going to hockey games with your father.
Yeah, hockey is a sport that is unlike anything else. I mean, you've got people, individuals who have to master so many different skills in order to put it all together and play at this incredibly elite level. As far as performance goes, you've got to be a incredibly fantastic skater. You've got to have the legs that feed your ability to skate, and you've got to have the accuracy in shooting and passing. You've got to have trust in your teammates. You've got to have trust in your line mates. You've got to have perseverance through scoring droughts, and on top of all that, the guy next to you is trying to check you into the boards. So it's really a sport of that's very dynamic.
And
is that your
funny,
brother, John? Is that
John Booth?
That'd be Dad.
Dad is
Okay.
saying 3 fights were at that game. He remembers.
Three fights during warm-ups. Yeah.
Yep, that's what he wrote. 3 fights during warm-ups alone.
Yeah.
Did you tell your wife about that one, John? No, we'll keep that personal.
Oh man.
So he was teaching you resilience. He was
Yes.
showing you.
And now the question that's on our minds, recently, well, I guess, back in February now, when Dr. Richard and I visited the Stanford campus that we talk about so much, and we had the pleasure of meeting the clinical psychologist for the San Francisco 49ers, Dr. Lisa Post.
That's right.
And, she's got a great story and journey, but, it's like she's a petite woman and she's in the locker room of the San Francisco 49ers. So that led Dr. Richard to a question about,
Yeah, I mean, what's it like for you? I mean, being around hockey players, are they used to having sports psychology professionals around? Are they used to having women in the locker room? What's the current landscape that you're navigating?
Sure. I kind of feel similar to working with my military veterans, to come full circle here, because I think that prepared me a lot. I think that your confidence and the level of confidence that you exude puts you in a position to be successful no matter who you are. And if you walk in and meet somebody for the first time and you are unsure of yourself and you are unsure of what you're doing, and you don't take that opportunity and run with it, it's going to be left behind. But if you are a person who can harness what's right in front of you and walk in with confidence and be secure in who you are, I think that that's what makes you successful. And that's what I feel makes me successful, is that I'm not intimidated. I don't feel that level of intimidation with anybody that I walk into a room with, because I'm confident in my skills. And that's not to sound arrogant or anything, but I know what I bring to the table. And
how about the reverse way, Kristina? How do they get intimidated by you coming in talking about mental skills? Like you said, I mean, you pointed out several things which become very clear to me when I try and ice skate, and just putting 2 feet in front of the other and staying upright is still a challenge for me. right, how hard it is to be doing all the things they're doing, let alone like, stick handling through their legs and still getting a snapshot off into the top right corner. How do they react when you come in talking about mental skills, talking about getting inside emotional processes, ways maybe they're not making the pass at the right moment or holding the shot too long?
I think that the thing there is to understand where the player's coming from and understand that this is foreign to them most of the time. Some players have done a lot of work with mental skills training, but those players that haven't, it's really about meeting their questioning attitude with understanding and not with resistance. So I'm not going to try to convince someone that what I'm doing is worth it or important. What I'm going to do is provide you with examples about how it is, how it's helpful, and try to, through experience. So basically asking someone to give me X amount of time, give me 3 weeks, give me 4 weeks to get you used to doing this, to teach you a little bit about this. Then if it's not for you, cool. I'm not about forcing anything on anybody, but give me that time to do something that you didn't already know.
So would you mind if I ask you, so maybe give me one example, one, of course, anonymous situation or person where you had to get their buy-in or their trust during that initial and how you did it, right?
Good question.
Thank you, Peter. I get my self-esteem is boosted on this show, so thank you. This is my therapist.
If I'm trying to think of one particular time, I think it's got to be somebody who, and I don't want to get too specific. So it was somebody who thought that what I was doing was really hokey, and who basically came in saying, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't really want to be doing this. I'm just here because I kind of have to be here. And those are always the most interesting for me because I know right at the outset that I'm at kind of a disadvantage. And I think the buy-in comes when, if you look at hockey specifically, so providing an example about getting in your own head, and this had to do with a scoring drought. So I asked the person, what are you thinking when you're on the ice? And he started to talk about some of the thoughts that he was having, and I said, so you're thinking a lot when you're on the ice? And he goes, well, yeah, and I'm thinking about the shot, I'm thinking about how to make it, and I'm thinking about this, that, and the other thing. And I said, well, where are your hockey skills when that's happening? And Richard, you mentioned before, there's so many skills that go together to keep you, on when you're playing hockey, and so much to think about, that this person was in their own head a heck of a lot more than he thought he was. And when he realized that he was in his head a heck of a lot more than he thought he was, all of a sudden I had my moment, or things started to kind of flow from there. So.
Right. Then they realized there's something they need to be conscious of, doing less of.
Mm-hmm.
What about, do you ever face any resistance with the fact, do any of these, big hockey guys, are they like, hey, you've never been on the ice, you don't know what it's like? Do you ever get that kind of resistance, or do they appreciate the fact that you're a lifelong fan?
I don't really lead with the fact that I'm a lifelong fan. I actually do skate. So if you put me on the ice, I could hold my own. Not with a stick in hand, but if you put me on the ice, I could hold my own. Sometimes. But what I tend to do is I say, all right, if you don't think I understand, tell me, explain it to me. So I don't pretend to know something I don't know. I don't know what it feels like to be checked into the boards. I just don't. I'm cool with that. But tell me what it's like to be thinking about that when you're on the ice, and tell me what it's like to be pressured to get a shot off, and tell me what it's like to be, to be a goalie and to let a shot in. Tell me what that's like. So I use that a lot.
I like it.
Yeah, so sometimes what you're saying is the fact that you're willing to be out there with them and you're willing to learn about their experience helps to build that trust.
Yeah.
And
that's how sports psychologists can work with sports that they've never played, or even sports that they've never heard of. So you don't have to be a hockey player to work with hockey players, and you don't have to be an equestrian to work with equestrian athletes. You have the opportunity to work with a lot of different athletes if you're open and willing to understand what they deal with specifically. And if you're open and willing to say when you don't know something and don't pretend that you know something. I like to say to clients, I don't know what I don't know. So if you don't tell me, I can't understand. And I tend to have a very open relationship with clients, and a relationship that's really built on a level of questioning between myself and the client that really, really helpful.
I think that transparency is amazing, because I ask you that question kind of as a layman. It's like, if I was a hockey player, I'm not a sexist type of person, but I would be kind of thinking like, hey, what do you know about hockey? Even if you're a man or a woman. And I love your approach to that. That would really make me say like, yeah, I could see sharing my thoughts with this psychologist,
Well, it's to bring it back to being at the VA Medical Center. I was never in the military. I don't know what it's like to leave my family and go overseas and fight in a war, whether you believe in that war or not. I don't know what that's like, but that's okay. I don't have to. And that was something that I used in that venue as well. So it's really, it's a technique and it's an honesty that is important in therapy. And Richard, you can probably attest to that as well.
Yes, it's a calculated risk to disclose and to be who we are, and it's interesting to have other professionals to rub off, when to do that and when not to, and to what degree, and especially when you're in the locker room or around one team on a regular basis, and you want them to come to you not only when things are great and on a winning streak and they love high-fiving everybody from the security guard to the parking attendant, but when they're in that drought and they are not telling anybody what's going on in their head, and maybe they're afraid of getting sent down, or maybe they're worried about their contract. Or so the fact that, and hockey players in particular, these are a very rare breed of very strong physical men that are not afraid to express themselves through a great degree of pain. So, but developing that trust that you understand them, and that willingness, that humility, is really, deft skillfulness, Dr. Reihl.
And, even though I'm wearing a hat, I got to say my hat is off to both of you, because regardless of, sports, armed troops coming back home, post-traumatic syndrome, the idea that as both of you as psychologists, your livelihood is helping people, sitting there listening to people. I couldn't imagine that. Like, I love to help people if I could, but to have the capacity to listen to people and give them guidance and advice, it's also a brave thing to do, because you've got someone's emotional well-being in your hands. And so not only to have the patience to listen, but the bravery to advise is, you two inspire me. That's all I'm trying to say here.
I love it. And thank you. Thank you. You're willing to be transparent and open and honest, Peter. And that's part of what's refreshing about, our journey together, is your willingness to ask a lot of questions about a lot of topics and get to know the people who are out there doing the work.
Yeah.
And thanks to our amazing engineer, Jarvis Essex, who's coming up with all the great graphics and hockey footage and 9/11 footage. Jarvis, what are we looking at? About 7 minutes left? Okay, 6 minutes left. So we're going to wrap it up here with you, Dr. Kristina. And what I kind of would like to leave the audience with you is, we'll get to where you're heading and contact information, but, take this opportunity to let us and the audience know, why Dr. Kristina, why the real deal?
I think that the biggest thing for me is that I'm passionate about what I do, and I'm willing to give myself the best opportunity possible to help someone. And I've really transitioned into this role as a clinical and sports psychologist, and it is encouraging to me that I feel so passionate about this new venture, and that I am just so excited to start this new private practice that I'm opening, which is called Real Peak Performance, and it's a transition from regular clinical practice, into a full-time sports psychology practice, which is just the most exciting thing for me. I think why me is why not? Why not? I'm a passionate person with a lot to give, and I want to see people succeed, and that's the biggest and most important thing. So you can find me at dr.reihl on Twitter, and I look forward to maybe speaking with you guys again.
Definitely, and thanks for taking that question so well, because after I said it, I was kind of like, oh, Dr. Kristina and Dr. Richard, you guys inspire me so much, and I'm like, why would anyone go to you, Dr. Kristina? Of course, I didn't mean it that way, but I kind of thought that in my head after I asked the question. But no, I think that you've really, sharing your journey with us has been amazing. And
your role playing being a hockey player at the team that she shows up to next.
Exactly.
So.
But no, I definitely would feel inspired to go to you for my needs in that regard. Now I'm just talking gibberish. But no, thank you for being our guest and for sharing your journey and your stories and inspiring and motivating us and our audience. We really appreciate it. And once again, before we say goodbye, they could reach you on Twitter at
Doc Reihl. So at Doc REIHL. I should really have it at The Real Deal, huh?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, without a doubt. And then when will your website for your new venture be up?
That should be up within the coming weeks. So it's realpeak.com will be where it is.
Great. And make sure you keep us abreast of it, and we'll let our audience know to look out for it.
Will do. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we might need a coach for a Tough Mudder or something, so we might call upon you.
Right.
Wonderful. I'm available.
So thank you again, and thanks for being on the Richard Listens on Sports Show, Dr. Kristina Reihl.
Thank you.
All right, see you soon.
Wow, that was really, really refreshing, and her attitude and personality is just really amazing. If I'm a hockey player, sign me up.
Well, it's often that we talk about, just occurring to me right now, about what happens in your bones, what happens in your body, and to be at that age, I mean, it's a whole nother show, but, even though it may not be trauma, to have lived through that time, to live through 9/11, everyone listening to this show has some sort of experience, and today even as these images come up, it triggers different residual emotions. So to have had that experience as a teenager, which could lead to, it's a really interesting age, because it could lead to a lot of powerlessness. It can lead to a lot of confusion as to the safety and security of your world. So the fact that it's led Dr. Kristina in such a direction to her friends, and to see this empathetic, responsive attunement, how can I help? So, to me, more than anything, we say, why her? She's perfect because she understands. She's lived through this journey, and it's amazing how it's the world of resilience, overcoming, and sports in our culture are so intertwined.
Absolutely. So we only have a couple minutes left here on the Richard Listens on Sports Show, so I'm going to put you on the spot, Dr. Richard. Our local team, the Los Angeles Dodgers, in their last 16 games have gone 1-15.
Go Tribe.
After dominating the whole season. So in a little minute capsule here, Dr. Richard, what is your advice to the Los Angeles Dodgers?
Well, I'll channel my inner Dr. Ken Revisa. My advice to the Los Angeles Dodgers, and, again, I'll take the humble approach here. Must be really hard to go from when everything's going right, every single move, interaction between your teammates is going well, to when everything's going wrong. And there's probably a lot of doubt and fear settling in, and loss of confidence. So my advice is get back to basics. Get back to the routine, just like, spring training. Get back into whatever you do to get yourself ready, and to take each game one game at a time, and each at bat. Get your preparation for your next opponent, and that's it. Because they will win again, and I think they're certainly a force to be reckoned with. And some of this losing streak, it's not to overreact to it, because there was a lot of tinkering with new pieces and resting people that got injured. It's also trusting your managers and the process of a really long season. And to remember, it's historic to win like 50 out of 60 games. So
Yeah.
And they're running into some teams that are fighting for their lives and really tough opponents. So you take your hats off to them, and you look at the mistakes that are correctable, and you start working with your coaches, and that they're professionals. But keep your heads in the moment.
I like it. And speaking of Dr. Ken Ravizza, I wonder what he's telling my Chicago Cubs about right now, because they had a horrible weekend. They could have basically been in the driver's seat for the rest of the season, but they lost all 3 games, and now
it's just one series. That's what he's telling us. Just one series.
Yeah.
You're still in the wild card lead, or division lead, better yet, and they've got to chase you. So besides from the one shellacking that they went through, it was a couple of close games, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we still are looking forward to having Dr. Ken Ravizza on the show. We're waiting till the season kind of winds down. Hopefully we won't have him on until November. And also,
we might have to go on the road with Dr. Ken Ravizza.
Yeah. And also, speaking of Dr. Ken, and after the season, we potentially will have the Houston Astros person.
That's right.
Whose name I'm not thinking of right now.
Jesse Michelle.
Jesse Michelle is another potential guest for us after.
That's right.
The
after he's done working with his Astros.
Playoff season ends. So that's a couple of pretty high-powered team. What do you call it?
Mental skills
coaches.
Yes,
that's the correct terminology. So
people call themselves many different things right now, but
yes.
I believe that's what his official title is of the Houston Astros, which I'm glad that they have.
Yeah,
that.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's structured differently for each team.
So, Dr. Richard, it's been a really great show. I always love being here with you.
Likewise.
Thank you to everyone that tuned in here at ubnradio.com, at Universal Broadcasting Network, and everyone that watched us on Facebook Live, on facebook.com RichardListens, where you can also write questions or comments to Dr. Richard. He answers almost all questions and comments that comes his way.
And please keep them coming. We want this. This is user interactive. You are a part of our experience. This is why we love going on the road. This is why we love bringing on the people we meet. Your voice, we want to represent it, and we appreciate you listening and following us.
And you can also follow the Richard Listens show at Richard Listens at Twitter and Instagram. And that's where you find Dr. Richard. And Instagram, you can find me at Donut Spirit. We got donuts in there. And coming up, our next show, our guest is going to be Mr. Model.
Mr. Top Model, that's right.
Yeah.
Agent extraordinaire.
To models, which is a whole different performance area that we haven't even touched base on.
Television star.
And that person is?
Mr. Paul Fisher.
Mr. Paul Fisher. So be looking for him on our next show here at Richard Listens on Sports. Thanks
Talking
again.
about his new show and
because it's starting up soon, right?
That's right.
So thank you for tuning in to Richard Listens on Sports. I'm Peter Sobey.
I'm Dr. Richard Olberger.
And we look forward to seeing you next time. So long.